Hello everybody, and welcome to some RPG Horror Story Cringe with D&D Doge. In today's episode, we have a few tales about Dungeons & Dragons that just downright confused me. Like a story about a dungeon master that seems to just be pulling things from his you-know-where, a player that demands a script for a campaign, and more. But before we venture forth and suffer the psychic damage that these stories are sure to induce, here's Lucky to bless us with a song. Ah, there we go. Now we can add a d4 to our wisdom saves. So now, it's time to dive right into these stories. Player wants me to give him a script of the campaign, then tells on me to my mother when I won't. By Reddit user, WrongDragonFruit438. So this happened a few years ago, so everything isn't fresh in my mind. The player in the title is my uncle, and he has the mental age of a teenager. This was my first time DMing a campaign, so it was mostly family who had joined. Obviously, no real names will be given, so here's the cast. It was me, Dagger, my older brother, Mina, my friend, my uncle, and my mom. So I was DMing a Zelda homebrew campaign, based a couple of decades after the game Twilight Princess, for some background information. The group seemed to be having fun, but around the end of session 4 or 5 was when my uncle wanted to talk to me. This is a loose dialogue from what I remember was said. Uncle:
Hey, can I ask you something?
Me: Yeah, what's up? Everyone was packing up, and the others had left the room that we had the session in, leaving just me, Mina, Dagger, and my uncle in there. Uncle:
Can I have a script for the campaign?
Me: A script? I could see Dagger and Mina looking at him with the same confusion I had. Uncle:
Yeah, I'd like a script so I can roleplay my character better, so I can think of dialogue to say beforehand.
I laughed in confusion because I honestly thought he was joking, though he was not. Me: I don't have a script of the campaign. I couldn't give you a script even if I did, because then you'd know things that you shouldn't, and it wouldn't be fair to the others. He just nodded and left after that, and I thought that had been the end of it, as I gave the other two a "did that really just happen" look. The next day, my mom called me into the kitchen, and I was thinking that she needed help cooking, as I like to help, only to see my uncle. Mom: Why won't you give Uncle a script? Me, bewildered that my uncle went crying to my mother. Because I don't have one. My mother, bless her, wasn't trying to pick sides or start anything. She didn't understand D&D or tabletop games in general. Mom: Uncle said that's how he used to play it when he was younger. Me: That's not how D&D works. 1. Even if I gave him a script, it wouldn't matter, because the other players go off script a lot anyway, so it would be useless. And 2, I don't even have notes for my campaign. I literally improv every session. So no, I'm not giving him a script. Uncle looked kinda like a kid that didn't get his way, but said nothing as I left the kitchen. Later on, I was told by my girlfriend that my mom asked her about the whole script thing, and she explained to my mother that basically D&D is an improv game. Also, one of the times I had left the session room when I was setting up for everyone, Uncle apparently peeked at my notes only to find none there, like I had said. Well, I mean, that's just stupid. If OP's uncle had been playing Dungeons & Dragons for years before this happened, then I wonder how he was playing it. Like OP told their mom, it's an improv game. The only script-like thing that OP would have would be a little bit of prep for the game, which it sounds like OP didn't really do much of that. Then for OP's uncle to go to OP's mother to complain just shows the maturity level of him. I don't really have much more to say on this one. I mean, it's more funny than anything. Let's just move on. Trapped Chest by Reddit user Affront to Life. I just want to bitch. I'm the DM, and we have 7 players split between 2 games, with significant but not complete overlap. The party is in the dungeon. It's a tomb at the bottom of a lake of acid, because that's fun. I made the dungeon very linear because a couple of players insist that a full clear should basically be guaranteed. A bit boring, but okay. I should also note a previous discussion. I think failing to pick a lock too many times with a low enough roll should render that lock unpickable. Basically, because it gives the mechanic weight without needing to convolute a narrative to do so. These 2 players think that failing to pick a lock should always just cost 6 seconds unless it's trapped, so we're using my player's preference. So they find the treasure room at the end of this wing. They clear the undead guards and find the big chest. Rogue rolls meh on the investigation and figures that the trap's payload is in the ceiling, but he can't quite figure out what the payload is. He sees the triggering mechanism and has a shot at disabling it, though whatever carries the mechanical signal is too hard to get to, unless the party wants to break out some pickaxes. The rogue decides on trying to disable the triggering mechanism and goes for it. He fails, and the ceiling very quickly starts to crack and leak ouchie water. Rogue says nope and runs. 4 or 5 rounds later, the room begins to properly flood, but because of the layout of the dungeon, it only really affects that one room. Because they bailed early, there was basically no risk of getting caught, basically picking the low risk, low reward route. I tell the players that they're almost 100% sure that this acid won't hurt coins or magic items, because they'd know that in character, and it's relevant here. 2 players are talking about their next move. Do they double down on this treasure, or just explore the rest of the dungeon? One player does an "alright" in a very exasperated voice, and the other player is silent. I call a bio break because I want some whiskey, and it seemed like a good time. I get back, and before I hit my push to talk, the 2 full clear players are very clearly upset, and the other 2 players are trying to disagree with them. I immediately just feel exhausted and ask some questions. I came away from that discussion with, even though we played by their rules, even though this was narratively and mechanically fine, even though this was practically an example they gave of acceptable consequences for failing a trapped lock instead of the lock breaking, they were mad that they couldn't get the full clear. I'm close to just going to looking for a game and starting a new game. These guys are the only people that I talk to that like D&D, but we're clearly incompatible. Well, I can see how that can be a bit frustrating as a DM. When it comes to lockpicking, I'm on the side that after so many tries, the lock should break. Otherwise, they can just sit there and keep on trying until they get it, so there would be no tension at all when it comes to picking a lock. And it sounds like OP placated to the point in making the chest trap so that it would adhere to what the players thought should happen. And when it did, they get upset that they can't completely clear the dungeon. Perhaps they are coming from a video game mindset, where you're playing one and check every single corner to make sure you don't miss anything. I mean, I'm sure all of us are guilty of becoming over-encumbered in Skyrim. But this is D&D. Things are probably going to be missed. Though, I wouldn't write off the players just yet, as it sounds like you are friends outside of Dungeons & Dragons. Perhaps they were just frustrated in the moment, much like OP was when they wrote this, and just need a bit of time to think on it and realize that they were being a bit unreasonable. I mean, hell, I've been in a session where a player got upset about something that happened, and may have reacted in a way that was unreasonable, but later they apologized, and we're still going strong. Though, those are just my thoughts. What do you guys think OP should do in this situation? But with that said, let's move on to the story that was one of the most confusing Dungeons & Dragons campaigns that I've ever read about. The DM's goal is to break my character. By Reddit user, John Hammond, JP. I've been playing in a D&D group for my college class. The class is only 24 people, and 6 of us are in the game. I hadn't played in a few years, I was supposed to play in college, but ran into some time overlaps and it just didn't happen. I created our Discord and started to organize everything. I made a spreadsheet to find the best time for us all to get together, and we didn't have a DM, so one of us volunteered. To start, this guy was someone who gave me a lot of bad vibes from the start. I shoved those vibes down because I had barely known him at the time. So we sit down at our first game, and we had a small group. I was playing a paladin, loyal to the god Shakara the Silent. This will be relevant later. The god himself refused to talk to us mere mortals, and my church had the belief that we were just not worthy. Shakara had fought a great demon 1,000 years ago, and had not been heard from since. Now, in truth, Shakara had actually lost the battle, and had been locked in chains for a millennium, but the church had yet to discover that. I had to make sure that my character was a fresh take from what I was used to, so my character became the best boy out there. His goal in life was to help everyone. He was a missionary carrying 100 pamphlets to hand out. Someone was building a house on their travel? Hey, it's a few hours for us, but it makes this guy's whole day. In a fight? We can talk them out of it, trust me. He was meant to be naive as hell, and a challenge for the party. I did make him tanky so that I could still be helpful, but I couldn't kill anyone. Now, let's say that I did kill something by accident. He would go into a deep depression and not be able to function. The hope was that eventually in the game, I would be able to use that as some character development. This is foreshadowing. The DM decided to start before the party would meet, and I found that really interesting. Kay, our group's rogue, the only other veteran at the table, was in a prison convoy for a crime that they hadn't committed. Interesting. I'm sure we'll meet in an interesting way. Perhaps I would have to break them out of their wrongful imprisonment, and I got teleported in front of the convoy. I don't mean the DM just had me wander in front of the convoy. I mean, I found a teleportation door and just happened to show up there. Now, my missionary is then promptly accused of a crime. Sure, okay, sounds good. What is it? I was then accused of murdering the king, but later in the same session, we would meet the king. The math is not checking out on this one. My character pulls out his pamphlets to try and prove that I had just started my mission, and it wouldn't be possible for me to do that. But nope, I was arrested and taken to jail. This was frustrating, but okay, sure. Plot train goes choo-choo. From here, we came across the third member of our group, who has since quit the game for unrelated reasons. Then the three of us were soft-locked by the DM at this point. Our weapons are gone, our armor stripped, and our items confiscated. There were no cracks in the wall or rust on the bars. This should have been the moment that I realized that the DM had no idea what they were doing, but that comes later. I try sparking a conversation with the guard, and I hand him my last pamphlet, to which he then tears up and hands back. The DM then describes it as something has been written on the interior. What could it contain? Well, all that was written inside was the word escape. The what now? We've been asking questions trying to get a clue for 4 minutes, and he can't understand that we have nothing that we can use to do that. So I ask the guard, and how are we supposed to do that?
With this,
he says as he hands us a club. Thanks for holding out on us. I was in real life kind of annoyed, but whatever. Let's break out. I then proceed to strike the wall with all my force. And I killed a child soldier on the other side. No damage dice, and no roll to hit, and proceeded to blow up his head. Holy God, that escalated quickly. Now, my paladin starts to freak the hell out, collecting the bits and pieces to try and save the kid. When he obviously can't save the kid, he starts to carry around the corpse to at least give it a proper burial. The DM at this time is laughing at my character's misfortune, but no one else is. Now, that kid would later be fed to crocodiles by a fellow party member, But that's beside the point. Before we can open the door, the king, that I had apparently murdered, bursts through the door with 20 of his best men and tells us that we're going to kill the dragon terrorizing the land. Alright, sure. Plot train go choo-choo. Let's go kill us a dragon. So he introduces us to our home base for the game with a flying sled just like old St. Nick's. Now, this is where the first session ended, and at the time, I viewed it as a rough start, but overall alright. Overall alright? A rough start? This campaign so far sounds like what my brain sounds like when I forget to take my ADD medication and have too much caffeine. But alright. The second session is the real turn of the tide. We have our first mission. We hop into our flying sled, and as we're flying, we enter into my new favorite dimension, the mirror dimension. Yeah, we just slide right in. No saving throws, nothing. Now, it's also around this time that we're in the mirror dimension that we find an under compartment. Now, our rogue decides to slip down there to see what's below. Skulls and body parts, but there is a magical scroll. The rogue reads it and then sees a vision of the future where my head is separated from my body and the third player is sitting on a throne. Always great to hear that my character is going to die. But then the rogue returns through the other player's eye. Well, I thought this story was confusing before, but good God, what? We were stunned. This didn't even make sense to us, and I'm pretty sure it didn't to the DM either. Soon after, our sled is going to crash. Again, no roll, just going to happen. At this point, I am so disconnected that I just say, "Wait until the last second and jump," and I'm the only one who pulls it off. I jump out of the sled, and the rest end up crashing into a castle. This is when things just stopped making sense. This is when it stopped making sense. Not like 3 paragraphs ago. The mirror dimension, the eye traversal, that made sense to you? Now, what can I do? Being Mr. The Law is the law for a reason, I knock, and inside the castle is God. Just straight up God. God is just chilling inside the mirror dimension and tells me to leave. I get a little upset because this clearly isn't my God, so I start telling him off a little. Hey, my friends are in there and I need them. So what does God do? He strips me of my paladin powers. For those who don't understand, believe me, I stopped understanding a while ago. This is the literal worst thing that can happen to a paladin, and this is the second session. So my paladin doesn't stop and starts demanding my friends. God then rolls to tell me that they don't think I'm their friend and succeeded. I have my paladin say, No, you're lying, oh God, no. And then my character apparently cries for 8 hours. Sure, why not? But the DM is laughing again, and no one else is. Eventually, I break out the other players, and my character, with their life ruined, decides to start a church here in the mirror dimension. Now, this session wasn't just bad, it was terrible. The only way we got through it was by making fun of the DM's terrible story. I made the joke that the mirror dimension was reversed in every regard. Evil became good, left was right, and cats and dogs got along. Now the DM, every time someone would make that joke, would state,
No, that's not how the mirror dimension works.
If you're a good god, then the god on the other side of the mirror dimension must be evil. You need to fight him.
That's not how the mirror dimension works.
Gravity must be reversed here in the mirror dimension.
That's not how the mirror dimension works.
All I can say is, everything is the way it is inside the mirror dimension. TLDR, the DM throws random insane stuff that makes no sense at us until we switch him out. Good God, that story gave me a migraine. I don't know what to say other than that it's good that the group switched out that DM, because Jesus Christ. I don't know how OP and the other players got through the beginning session, let alone going into a second one. Other than that, I just couldn't make sense out of anything in this one. If you can, please let me know in the comments. But that will do it for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and I think I need to go take an aspirin after that last one. Until next time.